The neighbors heard the screaming from the basement for weeks, but no one knew that beneath the $3 million mansion, an elderly woman was locked away, starving and begging her own daughter for mercy. What Jesus revealed to that daughter in a single night would expose a darkness so profound that even she couldn't recognize herself anymore. In the prestigious neighborhood of Ashford Heights, where manicured lawns stretched like green carpets and luxury cars lined pristine driveways, stood the Morrison Mansion, an architectural masterpiece of glass, marble, and modern elegance. To anyone passing by, it was the American dream realized, a testament to success, ambition, and prosperity. But behind those floor-to-ceiling windows, beneath the Italian marble floors and designer furniture, in the cold darkness of a basement that had been converted into something resembling a prison cell, lived a secret that would shatter the illusion of perfection. Her name was Margaret Morrison. She was 73 years old, and she hadn't seen sunlight in 8 months. This is not a story about strangers. This is not a story about evil people who never knew love. This is a story about how success can poison the soul, how wealth can blind the heart, and how a mother's unconditional love can endure even in the darkest pit of human cruelty. This is a story about divine intervention, about a daughter who forgot her humanity, and about the night Jesus Christ himself appeared to show her exactly what she had become. If you believe in second chances, if you believe in miracles, if you believe that no soul is beyond redemption, then stay with me. This story will challenge you, break your heart, and ultimately restore your faith in the transformative power of divine grace. Before we begin, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This channel exists to share true stories of God's grace working in impossible situations. Your support helps us reach more people who need to hear these messages of hope and redemption. Now, let me take you back to where it all began, not in that basement, but 30 years earlier, when Victoria Morrison was just a little girl, and her mother Margaret would have walked through fire to protect her. Before we begin, if you believe in second chances and the power of faith, type "restore" in the comments right now. Let your voice be the spark of hope for a family in need. Show the world your faith in action. It was 3:47 a.m. on a Thursday morning when Margaret Morrison woke up to complete darkness. For a moment, just a brief, cruel moment, she forgot where she was. Then the pain in her hip reminded her. The cold concrete beneath the thin mattress reminded her. The metal chain attached to her ankle reminded her. She was in the basement of her daughter's mansion, locked away like a criminal, like something shameful that needed to be hidden from the world. Margaret's hands trembled as she reached for the plastic water bottle her daughter had left 3 days ago. It was empty. Her lips were cracked and bleeding. Her stomach had stopped growling from hunger 2 days earlier. Now there was just a hollow, burning emptiness that made her feel like she was disappearing from the inside out. The basement was finished, once intended to be a home theater and wine cellar. But Victoria had cleared it out 8 months ago, installed a heavy lock on the door, and moved her mother down here temporarily, while she figured things out. That was 243 days ago. Margaret had been counting. The space was roughly 12 by 15 feet. There was a small bathroom in the corner, a toilet, and a tiny sink that only produced cold water. The mattress on the floor, a single blanket that wasn't warm enough, and one small window near the ceiling, painted black from the outside so no light could enter. Margaret tried to stand, but her legs buckled. At 73, she had osteoarthritis, high blood pressure, and diabetes conditions that required medication, proper nutrition, and medical care. She had received none of these things in months. Her daughter visited once every 3 or 4 days, usually late at night when the staff was gone. Victoria would unlock the door, slide in a tray of food, sometimes leftovers, sometimes just crackers and a banana, and leave without making eye contact. "Please," Margaret would beg. "Please, Victoria, let me come upstairs. I won't be any trouble. I just want to see the sky again." But Victoria would just shake her head, her face hard as stone. "You know why you're down here? You embarrassed me, Mother. You almost ruined everything I built. This is for your own good. This is for both of us." Then she would leave, and the lock would click shut, and Margaret would be alone again in the darkness. But Margaret wasn't entirely alone. She had her faith. She had her prayers. and she had a small pocket Bible that she'd managed to hide in her clothing when Victoria had brought her down here, the one possession her daughter hadn't taken away. Every day, Margaret would open that Bible to random pages and read by feeling the words with her fingers, because there wasn't enough light to see. She had memorized so many passages over the years that she could recall them even in total darkness. And she prayed. Oh, how she prayed. "Dear Lord Jesus," she would whisper into the darkness, her voice hoarse and weak. "I know you haven't forgotten me. I know you see me here. I don't understand why this is happening, but I trust you. And Lord, please don't be angry with Victoria. She's lost her way. She's lost herself. Please, Jesus, save my daughter. Show her what she's become before it's too late. I'd rather stay in this basement forever than see her soul destroyed. Please, Lord, please save my baby girl." The irony wasn't lost on Margaret. She was the prisoner, the victim, the one suffering, and yet she was praying for her captor's salvation. That's what mothers do. They love beyond reason. They forgive beyond logic. They hope beyond circumstances. But on this particular Thursday morning, as Margaret's body began to shut down from dehydration and malnutrition, as her consciousness started to fade in and out, something was about to happen that would change everything. Upstairs, in her master bedroom with its king-size bed and silk sheets, Victoria Morrison was about to have a visitor who would show her things she had spent years trying to forget, a visitor who would force her to look into a mirror she had been avoiding her entire adult life, a visitor named Jesus Christ. To understand how Victoria Morrison became the kind of person who could lock her own mother in a basement, we need to go back to before the mansion, before the money, before the success that poisoned her soul. Victoria wasn't born a monster. She was born to Margaret Morrison, a single mother who worked as a housekeeper at the Grandview Hotel, and an absent father who left when Victoria was just 2 years old. Margaret raised her daughter alone, working double shifts, taking extra cleaning jobs on weekends, doing everything possible to provide for her little girl. They lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment in the less affluent part of the city, where helicopters circled at night and sirens were the soundtrack of their lives. But inside their modest apartment, there was love. So much love. Margaret would come home exhausted, her back aching from bending over hotel bathtubs all day, her hands raw from cleaning chemicals, and she would still find the energy to help young Victoria with her homework, to make her favorite dinner, to read her bedtime stories. "You're going to do great things, baby," Margaret would tell her daughter, stroking her hair as she tucked her into bed. "You're so smart, so special. You're going to have opportunities I never had. You're going to make something of yourself." And Victoria believed her. Victoria loved her mother with the pure, uncomplicated love that children possess before the world complicates everything. When Victoria was 10, she watched her mother eat only crackers for dinner 3 nights in a row, so that Victoria could have proper meals before her big test at school. When Victoria asked why, Margaret smiled and said, "I'm on a diet, sweetheart. Don't worry about Mama." But Victoria knew, even at 10, she knew her mother was sacrificing for her. When Victoria was 13 and wanted to attend the school trip to Washington, D.C., Margaret took on extra shifts for 2 months, working herself to near collapse, to afford the $400 fee. She even bought Victoria a new camera so she could take pictures. "Take lots of photos, baby," Margaret had said, hugging her daughter at the bus departure. "See everything. Learn everything. This is your future. You belong in places like that." When Victoria was 16 and got accepted to the prestigious Ashford Academy, a private school for gifted students, Margaret made a decision that would change both their lives. She took out a loan she couldn't afford and used her savings to pay the first year's tuition. "This is your chance," Margaret told her daughter, tears in her eyes. "This school will open doors for you. You'll meet the right people, get into a great college. This is how you break the cycle of poverty, baby. This is how you build a different life." Victoria was accepted. She was brilliant, driven, hungry for success. But Ashford Academy was where the poison first entered her bloodstream. At Ashford, Victoria was surrounded by wealth she'd never imagined. Her classmates lived in mansions, wore designer clothes, drove luxury cars on their 16th birthdays. They talked about vacation homes in the Hamptons, ski trips to Switzerland, shopping trips to Paris. And Victoria? Victoria wore clothes from thrift stores that her mother had carefully selected and altered to look more expensive. She packed lunches from home while her classmates ordered sushi and gourmet salads. She pretended her mother was busy when parents' events came up because she was ashamed of Margaret's worn hands and humble demeanor. The shame started small. A slight embarrassment when a classmate asked where she lived. A quick change of subject when someone asked what her mother did for work. But shame, left untended, grows like cancer. By her senior year, Victoria had completely reinvented herself. She told people her mother was an interior designer instead of a housekeeper. She claimed they lived in a renovating property instead of a small apartment. She carefully curated her image, her story, her entire identity. And Margaret? Margaret noticed the change, but said nothing. She saw her daughter pulling away, saw the embarrassment in Victoria's eyes when she picked her up from school, saw how Victoria would duck down in the car so her friends wouldn't see them. It broke Margaret's heart, but she understood. She had been young once. She knew the pressure to fit in, to belong, to be accepted. She prayed that it was just a phase, that Victoria would come back to her roots, back to the values she'd been raised with. She was wrong. Victoria graduated top of her class at Ashford Academy. She got a full scholarship to Columbia University. She majored in finance and business management. She was driven, ruthless, brilliant. She also stopped calling her mother regularly, stopped visiting during breaks, made excuses about being too busy with internships and networking events. Margaret never complained. She continued working, sending Victoria money she didn't have for expenses, praying for her daughter, believing that once Victoria got established, once the pressure eased, she would come back. After college, Victoria landed a position at a prestigious investment firm. Within 5 years, she had climbed to a senior analyst position. Within 10 years, she was a vice president. Within 15 years, she had started her own wealth management firm, catering to the ultra-rich. She made her first million by 35, her second million by 37. By 43, she was worth over $20 million. She bought the mansion in Ashford Heights, the same neighborhood where her wealthy high school classmates had lived, the neighborhood she'd once looked at with longing and envy. She had arrived. She had made it. She had become exactly the kind of person she'd always wanted to be. Successful, wealthy, respected, powerful. She had also become someone she wouldn't have recognized at 16. Cold, calculating, image-obsessed, and utterly disconnected from her humanity. And her mother? Margaret had continued working until her body gave out. At 69, she had a mild stroke while cleaning a hotel room. The hotel terminated her employment. She lost her apartment because she couldn't pay rent. She had nowhere to go. She called her daughter the daughter she'd sacrificed everything for, the daughter she'd loved beyond measure, the daughter she'd believed in when no one else did. Victoria, sweetheart, I hate to ask, but I've had some medical problems. I lost my job and my apartment. Is there any way I could stay with you for just a little while? Just until I get back on my feet? There was a long silence on the phone. Then Victoria's voice, cold and measured. Fine, but this is temporary, mother. I have a reputation to maintain. You'll need to follow my rules. Margaret was so grateful she cried. She thought her daughter was saving her. She had no idea she was walking into a nightmare. Margaret moved into the mansion on a gray November afternoon. She arrived with a single suitcase containing all her worldly possessions, some clothes, a few photographs, her Bible, and a small jewelry box with her deceased mother's ring inside. Victoria had sent a car service to pick her up, not Victoria herself a car service. Margaret tried not to feel hurt by this. Her daughter was busy. She understood. She was just grateful to have a place to stay. The mansion took her breath away. It was so grand, so beautiful, so far beyond anything Margaret had ever experienced. She stood in the marble foyer, looking up at the crystal chandelier, hardly believing her daughter had built this life for herself. I'm so proud of you, baby, Margaret whispered when Victoria finally appeared. Victoria didn't hug her mother, didn't smile, just looked at her with an expression Margaret couldn't quite read. Let me show you where you'll be staying. She led Margaret to a small room on the main floor, probably intended as a maid's quarters or office. It was furnished minimally. A single bed, a small dresser, a lamp, No pictures on the walls, no warmth. But it was clean and safe, and Margaret was grateful. "Thank you, Victoria. This is more than enough. I really appreciate rules." Victoria interrupted, her voice sharp and businesslike. "You don't go into the rest of the house without permission. You don't answer the door if someone rings. You don't tell anyone you're living here. If I have guests, you stay in your room. You don't leave the house unless I take you. And you're quiet, always quiet. Understood?" Margaret's heart sank a little, but she nodded. "Of course, sweetheart. I don't want to be any trouble." "Good. I have a business dinner tonight. There's food in the kitchen, help yourself to whatever. I'll be back late." And she left. "No, welcome home, Mom. No, I'm glad you're safe. No, I've missed you. Just rules and boundaries and coldness." But Margaret made excuses for her. Victoria was under stress. Running a business was hard. She'd warm up over time. This was just an adjustment period. The first few weeks were tolerable. Margaret kept to her room mostly, reading her Bible, praying, occasionally venturing to the kitchen when she was sure Victoria was out. She tried to be helpful, doing small cleaning tasks, organizing things, staying invisible. But Victoria noticed, and she didn't like it. "What did I tell you about touching things?" Victoria snapped one evening when she found Margaret had washed dishes in the sink. "I have a cleaning service for that. Stay in your room. I was just trying to help, honey. I don't mind. I don't need your help. I need you to follow the rules." Margaret retreated to her room, hurt and confused. This wasn't the daughter she'd raised. This wasn't the little girl who used to climb into her lap and say, "I love you, Mama," every night before bed. Where had that girl gone? As weeks turned into months, Victoria's treatment grew worse. She began to resent her mother's presence. Margaret represented everything Victoria had worked so hard to escape: poverty, struggle, weakness, failure. Victoria had built an image of herself as a self-made success, conveniently forgetting the sacrifices her mother had made, the money her mother had sent, the foundation her mother had provided. In Victoria's revised history, she had done it all alone through brilliance and determination. Her mother was an inconvenient reminder of a past she wanted erased. Then came the incident that changed everything. Victoria was hosting a high-profile dinner party. Potential investors, wealthy clients, influential people. Margaret had been instructed to stay in her room all evening, not to make a sound, to pretend she didn't exist. But Margaret, who was now 72 and beginning to show signs of dementia, got confused. She forgot about the party. She was hungry and wandered into the kitchen just as Victoria's process. Guests were having cocktails in the adjacent living room. One of the guests, a woman in an expensive dress, noticed her. "Oh, hello. Are you the housekeeper? Could you bring more ice?" Margaret, confused and embarrassed, stammered, I'm Victoria's mother." Victoria's voice cut through the air like a knife. She appeared instantly, her face a mask of forced pleasantness, but her eyes blazing with fury. "Yes, this is my mother. She's not well. Early dementia. I'm caring for her here." She gripped Margaret's arm hard enough to bruise and guided her out of the room. "How sweet of you," the guest called after them. "Taking care of your mother. That's wonderful." But once they were in the hallway, Victoria's mask fell. She dragged Margaret to her room and shoved her inside so hard that the elderly woman stumbled and fell against the bed. "What is wrong with you?" Victoria hissed. "I told you to stay in here. You almost ruined everything. Do you know how hard I worked to maintain my reputation? And you show up looking like what?" Margaret asked softly, tears in her eyes. "Like your mother? Like the woman who raised you? Like the woman who sacrificed everything so you could have this life?" The words hung in the air between them. For just a moment, something flickered in Victoria's eyes, maybe regret, maybe recognition, but then it was gone, replaced by cold fury. "You embarrassed me," Victoria said quietly. "In front of the people who matter most to my business. You made me look weak, made me look poor. Victoria, I'm so sorry. I forgot about the party. I was just hungry and I don't want to hear it." Victoria stood at the door, her hand on the knob. "You can't be trusted. You're a liability. I need to figure out what to do with you." "What do you mean?" "Victoria, what are you saying?" But Victoria left without answering, locking the door behind her. Margaret heard the click of the lock and felt her heart shatter into a devilish, 1,000 pieces. That was the night Victoria made her decision. Her mother was a problem that needed to be solved, an inconvenience that needed to be removed from sight. 3 days later, Victoria told her mother they were moving her to a better room. She led Margaret down the basement stairs. Margaret followed obediently, trusting her daughter, believing that despite everything, Victoria still loved her somewhere deep inside. The basement was cold and unfurnished. There was a mattress on the floor, a small bathroom in the corner. "This is temporary," Victoria said, not meeting her mother's eyes. "Just until I can make other arrangements. You'll be more comfortable down here, more privacy." "But Victoria, it's so cold, and there's no windows. How will I, Mother?" Victoria's voice was ice. "This is my house. These are my rules. You either accept this, or you can leave and figure things out on your own. And we both know you have nowhere else to go." Margaret felt her legs weaken. She sat down on the mattress, her whole body trembling. "How long?" "A few weeks, maybe a month. I need to find a facility for you, somewhere appropriate." But both of them knew that was a lie. There would be no facility, no other arrangements. This was the solution. Victoria turned and walked up the stairs. Margaret heard the door close, heard the lock click into place, and that was the beginning of her captivity. 8 months ago. For the first few months, Victoria visited semi-regularly. She would bring food, check that her mother was still alive, and leave. No conversation, no explanation, no compassion. But as time went on, the visits became less frequent. The food portions got smaller. The cruelty deepened. Victoria convinced herself she was doing the right thing. Her mother was old, confused, a burden. This way, she was safe and contained, out of sight, out of mind. She managed to completely compartmentalize what she was doing. Upstairs, she was Victoria Morrison, successful businesswoman, philanthropist, respected member of the community. She donated to charities. She smiled at benefits. She gave speeches about empowerment and success. Downstairs, she was something else entirely, something dark and broken and inhuman. And Margaret, she prayed. Even as her body weakened, even as hope seemed lost, she prayed for her daughter's soul. "Lord Jesus," she would whisper in the darkness, "save my Victoria. She doesn't know what she's become. Show her the truth before it destroys her completely. I forgive her, Lord. Please, let your grace reach her." Margaret's prayers were about to be answered in a way she never could have imagined. Because on this particular Thursday night, as Victoria lay in her luxurious bed upstairs, comfortable and secure in her delusions, Jesus Christ was preparing to pay her a visit, and nothing would ever be the same again.
If this moment is touching your heart, share your story or a prayer request in the comments below. Someone watching may need the encouragement only you can give. Tag a friend who could use this message of hope today.
Victoria Morrison's eyes snapped open at exactly 3:33 a.m. She didn't know why she woke. There was no sound, no disturbance, no logical reason. But she was suddenly wide awake, her heart pounding, feeling like the air in her bedroom had changed, somehow thicker, charged with electricity. The room was dark, except for the moonlight streaming through her floor-to-ceiling windows. Everything looked normal. Her designer furniture, her walk-in closet, her expensive artwork on the walls. But something was wrong. She could feel it. And then she saw him. At the foot of her bed stood a figure, a man. But not just any man. He was dressed in simple white robes that seemed to glow with their own light. His face was serene but carried an authority that made Victoria's breath catch in her throat. His eyes, those eyes looked at her with a combination of infinite love and infinite sadness that pierced straight through her carefully constructed armor. Victoria wanted to scream, wanted to run, but she found she couldn't move, couldn't make a sound. It wasn't that she was physically restrained, it was that his presence commanded such absolute authority that her body wouldn't obey her panic. Victoria Morrison. His voice wasn't loud, but it filled the entire room, resonating in her chest, her bones, her very soul. "Do you know who I am?" Victoria's mouth opened, but no words came out at first. Finally, in a whisper, "Jesus." Yes, he took a step closer. "I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the one your mother has been praying to every single night for 8 months, the one she's been begging to save you. And I have come because those prayers have reached heaven, and they will not go unanswered. This isn't real, Victoria whispered, her voice shaking. This is a dream. This isn't happening. Is it a dream? Jesus asked gently. Or is this the first time you've been truly awake in 20 years? He extended his hand toward her. Come, I want to show you something. I want you to see what you've become. No. Victoria shook her head, tears beginning to stream down her face. No, please. I don't want to see anything. Please just leave. I will never leave, Jesus said softly. I am with you always, even when you can't feel me, even when you run from me. But tonight, you will see. You will understand, and then you will choose. He touched her hand, and suddenly the bedroom disappeared. Victoria found herself transported, not physically, but spiritually, watching her own life unfold like a movie she couldn't pause or stop. She saw herself as a little girl, maybe 6 years old, sick with the flu. Her mother Margaret sat beside her bed all night, putting cool washcloths on her forehead, singing softly, praying over her. Her mother's eyes were heavy with exhaustion. She had worked a double shift that day, but she never left her daughter's side. I love you so much, baby, young Margaret whispered, kissing her daughter's forehead. I would do anything for you, anything in this world. The scene shifted. Victoria was now 12, crying because kids at school had made fun of her worn-out shoes. She watched her mother Margaret count coins from a jar on the kitchen counter, money she'd been saving for groceries. Without hesitation, Margaret took Victoria's hand and walked her to the shoe store, spending money she didn't have to buy her daughter new shoes. Don't you cry, baby, Margaret had said, wiping Victoria's tears. You're beautiful inside and out. Don't ever let anyone make you feel less than you are. The scene shifted again. Victoria was 16, raging at her mother about something trivial she couldn't even remember what now. I wish you had more money, teenage Victoria screamed. I wish you were like the other moms. I'm embarrassed of you. She watched her mother's face crumple, watched Margaret turn away to hide her tears. But even then, even after those cruel words, Margaret had gone to Victoria's room that night while she slept, kissed her forehead, and whispered, I love you, baby, always, no matter what. Stop, Victoria begged Jesus. Please stop showing me this. Why? Jesus asked, his voice gentle but firm. Because it hurts to see the truth? Because it's easier to forget the sacrifices, to pretend you built yourself, to erase the woman who gave you everything. The scenes continued, faster now. Margaret working 3 jobs to pay for Victoria's private school. Margaret skipping meals so Victoria could eat. Margaret selling her only valuable possession, a necklace from her own mother, to buy Victoria a laptop for college. Margaret crying alone in her apartment after Victoria stopped calling for 6 months. Margaret suffering a stroke and having no one to help her because her daughter was too busy to visit. Enough, Victoria screamed. I get it. I was selfish. I know that. But you don't understand. I had to become someone. I had to succeed. I couldn't stay poor forever. And what did you have to sacrifice to succeed? Jesus asked. Your humanity? Your compassion? Your very soul? The scene changed abruptly. Victoria found herself standing in her own basement, looking down at her mother. But she was seeing Margaret as if for the first time, really seeing her. The elderly woman was emaciated, bones visible through her thin nightgown. Her hair was matted and dirty. Her skin was gray and papery. She had bruises on her arms and legs from falling on the concrete floor. Her lips were cracked and bleeding from dehydration. Margaret was lying on the mattress, barely conscious, murmuring prayers through cracked lips. Dear Jesus, thank you. Thank you for another day. Please save Victoria. Please don't let her soul be destroyed. I forgive her, Lord. Please save her. Victoria felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. Oh my God, she whispered. Oh my God, what have I done? You locked your mother, the woman who gave you life, who sacrificed everything for you, who never stopped loving you, in a basement and left her to die slowly, Jesus said, his voice filled with grief. You fed her scraps. You denied her medicine. You stole her dignity, her freedom, her humanity. And for what? To protect your image? To maintain your reputation? I didn't mean to. Jesus turned to face her fully, and his eyes blazed with righteous anger. You made a choice every single day for 8 months. Every time you walked past that basement door, every time you heard her crying and ignored it, every time you went to bed in your comfortable room while she froze on concrete. These weren't accidents, Victoria. These were choices. Victoria collapsed to her knees, sobbing. I don't know what happened to me. I don't know how I became this person. I know what happened, Jesus said, his voice softening. You started believing that your worth came from your wealth. You started measuring success by money instead of love. You started worshiping the approval of people who don't matter, while destroying the relationship with the one person who loved you unconditionally. He knelt beside her. You became so afraid of being seen as poor that you impoverished your own soul. But I have one more thing to show you, Jesus said. I want you to see your future if you continue on this path. Victoria looked up, terror in her eyes. Please, I don't want to see any more. You must. The scene shifted violently. Victoria found herself standing in the basement again, but it was different now. Time had passed. She could sense it. Her mother's body was on the mattress, but Margaret wasn't moving, wasn't breathing. Victoria watched herself, her future self, walk down the basement stairs with a tray of food. Watched herself freeze when she saw her mother's still form. Mom? Future. Victoria's voice was uncertain. Mom? She rushed to the mattress, checked for a pulse. Nothing. Margaret Morrison had died alone, in the dark, locked in a basement by her own daughter. Victoria watched her future self break down, screaming, pulling at her hair, realizing too late what she had done. Then the scene jumped forward. Victoria saw herself being arrested, saw the news coverage. Wealthy executive charged with elderly abuse, negligent homicide, saw her business collapse, saw her mansion seized, saw herself in prison. But worse than all of that, worse than the public shame, the financial ruin, the imprisonment, was what came after. Victoria watched her future self, now an old woman, dying alone in a prison infirmary. And then she saw what came next. She stood before the throne of God, and her life was laid bare. Every cruelty, every selfish choice, every moment she had chosen her image over her mother's suffering. And she heard the words, "Depart from me, I never knew you." She saw herself cast into darkness, where there was weeping and gnashing of teeth, where the memory of what she'd done to her mother would torment her for eternity, where there would be no relief, no redemption, no second chances. No, Victoria screamed. Please, please, I don't want that. Please. The vision ended. She was back in her bedroom, on her knees, Jesus standing before her. That is your future if you continue on this path. Jesus said gravely, that is where your choices are leading you, but it doesn't have to be that way. Jesus extended his hand to her. Victoria Morrison, I am giving you what your mother has been praying for, a chance to be saved, a chance to return to your humanity, a chance to choose love over pride, redemption over reputation. Victoria looked up at him, her face wet with tears, her whole body shaking. How? How can I be forgiven for what I've done? How can I ever make this right? By choosing differently starting right now, Jesus said. By going down to that basement and freeing your mother. By caring for her the way she cared for you. By humbling yourself and accepting responsibility for your actions. By letting go of the false self you've built and becoming who I created you to be. But everyone will know, Victoria whispered. My reputation will be destroyed. My business will collapse. I'll lose everything. You'll lose everything that doesn't matter, Jesus corrected gently. And you'll gain the only thing that does, your soul, your mother, your humanity. He leaned closer. Victoria, listen to me carefully. Your mother is dying. If you don't act now, tonight, she will not survive another week. Her body is failing. This is your last chance. Not just to save her life, but to save your own soul. What if I can't do it? Victoria sobbed. What if I'm too broken? What if I've gone too far? Jesus smiled, the first smile Victoria had seen from him all night. Then let me show you something else. He touched her forehead, and suddenly Victoria felt warmth flooding through her. She felt the presence of every prayer her mother had ever prayed for her. Hundreds of them, thousands of them. Every night for 8 months, Margaret had begged God to save her daughter. And Victoria understood. Her mother's love had built a bridge between her darkness and God's light. Even when Victoria had given up on herself, her mother never had. Your mother's love is a reflection of my love, Jesus said softly. It never gives up. It never stops believing. It always hopes. It always perseveres. And that love is more powerful than every sin you've ever committed. Jesus placed both hands on Victoria's shoulders. I didn't come to condemn you, Victoria. I came to save you. But you must choose, right now, this moment. Will you continue down the path that leads to death, or will you accept my grace and walk the difficult road that leads to life? Victoria looked into his eyes, those infinite, compassionate, all-seeing eyes, and she saw herself reflected there. Not the successful businesswoman, not the respected executive, just a broken daughter who had lost her way. I choose life, she whispered. I choose you. Please, help me. I can't do this alone. Jesus pulled her to her feet and embraced her. The moment his arms wrapped around her, Victoria felt something break inside her, all the pride, all the fear, all the false identity she'd been clinging to shattered like glass. And in its place came something she hadn't felt in 20 years. Genuine, love, unconditional, transformative, healing. Then go, Jesus said, releasing her. Go to your mother, save her life, care for her, love her, and watch as I restore everything the enemy has stolen from you both. Will I see you again? Victoria asked. I am with you always, Jesus said, beginning to fade. Even to the end of the age. Every time you show love to your mother, you show love to me. Every time you sacrifice for her, you honor me. Go now. There isn't much time. And then he was gone. Victoria stood alone in her bedroom, but she wasn't the same woman who had fallen asleep a few hours ago. Something fundamental had shifted inside her. The scales had fallen from her eyes. She looked at the clock. 4:17 a.m. Without hesitation, still in her pajamas, she ran from her bedroom, down the stairs, through the house, to the basement door. Her hands trembled as she unlocked it. How many times had she locked this door and walked away? How many times had she heard her mother crying and ignored it? Never again, she whispered. Never again. She opened the door and descended the stairs. The basement was even colder than Victoria remembered, and darker. And the smell, how had she ignored the smell of sickness and human suffering for so long? Mom? Victoria's voice cracked as she reached the bottom of the stairs. Mom, where are you? She fumbled for the light switch and finally found it. The single bulb illuminated the space, and what Victoria saw made her legs buckle. Her mother was lying on the mattress, barely moving, her breathing shallow and ragged. She looked like she weighed maybe 90 pounds. Her skin was gray. Her eyes were closed. Oh God, Mom. Victoria ran to her mother's side, falling to her knees. Mom, can you hear me? Please, Mom, please wake up. Margaret's eyelids fluttered. She tried to speak, but her voice was too weak. Victoria gently touched her mother's face and gasped at how hot it was. You're burning up. You have a fever. How long have you been like this? But Margaret couldn't answer. She was barely conscious. Victoria's training from years of corporate crisis management kicked in. She needed to act fast. She ran to the small bathroom sink, grabbed a cup, filled it with water, and brought it to her mother's lips. Drink, Mom. Please drink. Just a little bit. She supported her mother's head and helped her take tiny sips. Margaret's throat worked painfully to swallow, but she managed a few sips before falling back, exhausted from even that small effort. Victoria pulled out her phone and dialed 911. 911. What's your emergency? My mother, she's 73. She's severely dehydrated and malnourished. She has a high fever. She's barely conscious. I need an ambulance right away. What's your address, ma'am? Victoria gave the address, her voice shaking. Please hurry. Please. I think she's dying. An ambulance is on the way. Can you tell me what happened? Victoria's throat tightened. This was it. This was the moment where she could lie, could make up some story, could protect her reputation. But she looked at her mother lying there, suffering because of her cruelty, and she knew there was only one choice. I did this, Victoria said, tears streaming down her face. I locked my mother in my basement. I neglected her. I barely fed her. This is my fault. Please, just send help. I'll take full responsibility, but please save her. There was a brief silence on the line. Then, ma'am, stay on the line. Help is coming. Victoria sat beside her mother, holding her hand, sobbing. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. Please don't die. Please give me a chance to make this right. I love you. I've always loved you. I just forgot how. I'm so sorry." Margaret's eyes opened just a sliver. Her cracked lips moved, and Victoria leaned in close to hear. "I forgive you," Margaret whispered. "Love you, baby girl." Those words shattered Victoria completely. After everything she'd done, after state, all the cruelty and neglect, her mother's first words were forgiveness and love. "Jesus was here, Mom," Victoria sobbed. "He came to me. He showed me what I'd become. He saved me. Your prayers saved me." A tiny smile appeared on Margaret's lips. "Told you. He never gives up." The sound of sirens approached. Victoria heard pounding on her front door. "Down here," she shouted. "We're in the basement." Paramedics rushed down the stairs with equipment. They immediately began working on Margaret, checking vital signs, starting an IV, preparing to transport her. "Ma'am, we need you to step back," one of the paramedics said to Victoria. "No," Victoria said firmly. "I'm not leaving her side, not ever again. Ma'am, I'm her daughter. I'm going with her." The paramedics exchanged glances. They'd obviously been briefed by dispatch about the situation, but they nodded. As they lifted Margaret onto a stretcher, Victoria held her mother's hand, walking beside her up the basement, stairs, out through the mansion, toward the ambulance. Neighbors were beginning to emerge from their houses, drawn by the commotion. Victoria saw their curious, judgmental faces. She knew what would happen next. The questions, the investigation, the exposure of her crime. And for the first time in 20 years, she didn't care what anyone thought. The only person whose opinion mattered was lying on that stretcher, fighting for her life. Margaret was rushed into emergency care. Victoria sat in the waiting room, still in her pajamas, her face tear-stained, her hands shaking. A police officer approached her. "Miss Morrison, I'm Officer Chen. We need to ask you some questions about the situation at your residence." Victoria looked up at him. "I'll tell you everything, but please, can you wait until I know if my mother is going to survive?" Officer Chen studied her for a moment, then nodded. "I'll be right here." 3 hours later, a doctor emerged. Victoria jumped to her feet. "Your mother is stable," the doctor said, "but it was very close. She has severe malnutrition, dehydration, a kidney infection, and her diabetes has spiraled out of control. Her body has been in crisis for weeks, probably months. Will she recover?" Victoria asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The doctor gave her a hard look. "That depends on what happens next. She needs intensive medical care, proper nutrition, medication, and rehabilitation. She's lost significant muscle mass and bone density. It will take months, maybe years, to reverse the damage." He paused. "Miss Morrison, I'm required by law to report suspected elder abuse. We've already contacted Adult Protective Services." "I know," Victoria said. "I'll cooperate fully with the investigation. I'll tell them everything. Whatever consequences I face, I deserve them. I just need to know she's going to live." "She'll live," the doctor said, "but she needs someone to care for her. Someone who will actually care for her properly this time. That will be me," Victoria said firmly. "I'm going to make this right." Margaret had been in the hospital for 5 days. She was slowly regaining strength. The IV fluids and nutrition, combined with medication and care, had brought her back from the brink. Victoria had not left the hospital. She slept in a chair in her mother's room. She was there every time Margaret woke up. She helped the nurses with care tasks. She fed her mother, held her hand, read to her, prayed with her, and she cried. She cried for the lost years, for the cruelty, for the daughter she should have been but wasn't. On the 6th day, Margaret was finally well enough to have a real conversation. "Victoria," she said softly, her voice still weak but clearer than it had been. "You don't have to stay here. You have work. You have responsibilities." "No, Mom," Victoria said, pulling her chair closer to the bed. "You're my responsibility. You're my priority. Nothing else matters." Margaret looked at her daughter with those wise, forgiving eyes. "What happened to you that night? You were different when you came downstairs. You mentioned Jesus?" Victoria nodded, tears filling her eyes. "He came to me, Mom. He actually appeared to me. He showed me what I'd become. He showed me what I was doing to you. He showed me my future if I didn't change. She took her mother's hand, and he showed me something else. He showed me all your prayers, every single prayer you prayed for me, even when I was torturing you. You never stopped loving me. You never stopped believing in me. Your love built a bridge between me and God, and he crossed it to save me. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. I never gave up on you, baby. I knew my girl was still in there somewhere. I knew Jesus would reach you. I don't deserve your forgiveness, Victoria whispered. What I did to you was unforgivable. I locked you away. I starved you. I treated you worse than an animal. I was a monster, Mom. A monster. You were lost, Margaret corrected gently. There's a difference. Lost people can be found, and Jesus found you. But how can you forgive me? How can you even look at me after what I did? Margaret squeezed her daughter's hand, with what little strength she had. Because that's what love does, baby. Real love, the kind that comes from God, it forgives. It doesn't keep a record of wrongs. It doesn't hold grudges. It hopes. It perseveres. It never gives up. She smiled weakly. You're my daughter. I would forgive you 1,000 times. That's what mothers do. Victoria broke down completely, laying her head on her mother's bed, sobbing. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making this up to you. I promise. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to love you the way you loved me. I'm going to be the daughter you deserved all along. You don't have to make anything up to me, Margaret said, stroking her daughter's hair. You just have to love me. That's all I ever wanted. Victoria did exactly what she promised. She confessed everything to the police, to Adult Protective Services, to anyone who would listen. The investigation was thorough and public. The media had a field day with it. Millionaire executive arrested for imprisoning elderly mother. Victoria's business collapsed. Her clients left. Her reputation was destroyed. She lost everything she'd spent 20 years building, and she didn't regret it for a second. Because when she looked at her mother slowly recovering, gaining weight, getting stronger, she realized she was gaining something infinitely more valuable than money or status. She was regaining her soul. The legal consequences were severe. Victoria was charged with elderly abuse, false imprisonment, and negligent endangerment. Her lawyer advised her to plead not guilty, to fight it, to minimize the damage. But Victoria refused. I did it, she said simply. I'm guilty. I deserve to be punished. However, when the case went to court, something unexpected happened. Margaret, now stronger and able to speak clearly, addressed the judge. Your Honor, she said, her voice trembling but determined. I know my daughter did wrong. I know she hurt me, but I also know she's changed. I've watched her transformation. It's real. It's genuine. Jesus Christ reached into her heart and pulled out the daughter I raised. She's back. Margaret looked at Victoria with tears in her eyes. She's spending every day caring for me, loving me, making amends. Putting her in prison won't help me. It won't heal me. What heals me is having my daughter back. What heals me is seeing her live the rest of her life in service to others, learning from her mistakes, becoming an example of redemption. The courtroom was silent. I'm asking you for mercy, Your Honor, Margaret continued. Not because she doesn't deserve punishment, but because punishment without redemption is just cruelty. She's already been punished by her own conscience, by the loss of everything she valued. What she needs now is a chance to rebuild not her business or reputation, but her character, her humanity. The judge listened carefully. In the end, Victoria received a suspended sentence with conditions, mandatory community service working with elderly care facilities, regular check-ins with social services, and commitment to caring for her mother. It was mercy Victoria knew she didn't deserve, but accepted with profound gratitude. Victoria sold the mansion. She sold most of her possessions. She moved with her mother into a modest but comfortable home, nothing fancy, but filled with warmth and light. She took a job teaching financial literacy classes at a community center, using her business skills to help others while staying humble. The pay was a fraction of what she'd made before, but it was honest work that served a purpose. Every morning, Victoria woke up early to make her mother breakfast. She helped Margaret with her medications, her exercises, her daily needs. They would sit together on the porch, drinking coffee, talking about everything and nothing. Victoria had joined a church, the same church her mother had attended for years before the stroke. She gave her testimony there, holding nothing back, letting people see her shame and her redemption. "I was a daughter who forgot how to love," she told the congregation, tears streaming down her face. "I was so focused on success that I sacrificed the one person who made my success possible. I locked my own mother in a basement and left her to die because I was ashamed of where I came from." The church was silent, hanging on every word. "But Jesus didn't give up on me," Victoria continued. "Even when I gave up on myself, even when I became a monster, he appeared to me and showed me what I'd become. He gave me a chance I didn't deserve. And my mother, this incredible woman who I tortured, she forgave me." Victoria looked at Margaret, who was sitting in the front row, tears in, her eyes but smiling. "I can never undo what I did," Victoria said. "I can never give back the 8 months I stole from her, but I can honor her for the rest of my life. I can love her the way she loved me. I can be an example that no one is beyond redemption if they truly repent and surrender to Jesus Christ." The church erupted in applause and amens. After the service, people approached Victoria, some to condemn, but more to thank her. One young woman in particular grabbed Victoria's hand. "Thank you," she said, crying. "I've been treating my mother terribly. I've been embarrassed of her. But hearing your story, I'm going to change. I'm going to love her before it's too late." And Victoria understood. This was her purpose now, not to be wealthy or successful, but to be a warning and an example, to show people what happens when we forget love, and to show them that redemption is always possible.
Subscribe to Tales of God's Grace for more true miracles and stories of redemption. Your support helps us reach and restore families around the world. Don't forget to tag a friend and share this video, so together we can spread faith, love, and healing where it's needed most.